Greetings, it is I, ShepherdShang, and, you notice this video is gonna be a bit longer than, stuff? Yeah, I just finished playing, the main game of Dragon Quest VII for the 3DS, and I want to talk about it a bit. Simply because, again, Dragon Warrior 7 was the game I grew up with. It was one of my all-time favorite games, and the remake is pretty good, I'd say. Yeah, I was really worried that it was gonna just completely shit on it, the original version, after what happened with Dragon Quest IX. But no, the rest of the remake was pretty good. Yeah, I have quite a bit of praise for it. Even saying that, though, I do have some grievances, because there were some really very strange things that I just don't understand why they would do that. But yeah, I'll just tongue tie. I do that. I'm gonna say so I beat the main game at level 45. Again, in all the years I've been playing Dragon Quest games, only once have I ever gotten a character to max level, and I'm pretty sure that was because of an in-game mechanic. Yeah, that was once when I was 12. In Dragon Quest III, Dragon Warrior 3 for the Game Boy Color. Yeah, you can look that stuff up about that on your own, because leveling is hard in Dragon Quest games. That hasn't changed, except it sort of has. Finished the main game at 74 hours and 1 minute. Yeah, I actually would have finished this game sooner if I basically hadn't taken a week off from playing it. Yeah, for the first week I was practically playing it non-stop. The only thing I was putting it down to do was use the toilet, eat, and let it charge. Let my 3DS charge. And then sleep, of course, because, yeah, you need sleep. But yeah, the game was good. Let's see, at this point you've probably noticed that I've got some music playing in this. I'm actually using music from the original PlayStation version of Dragon Warrior 7, and you're also going to be hearing the music from the remastered soundtrack for the 3DS. And I gotta say, Sugiyama Koichi, you are amazing. Oh my god, it's so good. I have always loved the Dragon Quest music, and the remastered tracks for this were great. They sound so good. Even the PlayStation 1 versions, they still sound pretty good, but yeah, the remastered version's great. Love it. And speaking of things in the remastered version, because I ramble, the game looks great. Yeah, the 3D environments look so nice. Again, much better than Dragon Quest IX. When I first saw the stuff for the remake back in like 2013, I really was worried about the fact that they were using 3D models, because they looked like they were super deformed the way it was in Dragon Quest IX. The characters in Dragon Quest IX were practically just Miis with skins on them. They did not look good. No, they did not. But yeah, the character models were great in this. 3D environments, again, they were very nice. I did find it interesting that there was actually a good bit of clipping with the character models. Almost every time a character walked through a door, their heads would clip through the top. And while it was very amusing, I don't really understand why they let that happen. Yeah, I did also notice, there were actually some frame rate issues with the game. I was very surprised with that. It was almost always during battle sequences, which I can sort of understand. There was generally a good bit of stuff happening. But yeah, it was surprising. I don't think I've ever actually seen any frame rate issues on any of the games I've had for the 3DS. Yeah, that maybe just my experience, but it was odd for me. Speaking of the battles, I really liked what they did with the 3DS. They basically they created depth of field for the battles. The monsters weren't just in a straight line. They would be showing up in various places in the field. They'd be showing up in front of each other, in back of each other, to the sides. And it looked good. I didn't even realize what it was at first, simply because I don't use the 3D function on my 3DS too much, simply because I have bad eyesight. Using the 3D function just makes my eyes hurt so much. It's really unfortunate. But yeah, I liked that. That was really clever. It was a good use. Only thing about the battle stuff I didn't like was basically, you could only see the backs of your characters. It's kind of unfortunate. I really liked the way, in Dragon Quest VIII, that the cameras was sort of moving around all over the place when you were, using in battles. That was nice. But again, that might not have been the easiest thing to implement, considering some of the other strange camera choices they made with this game. So why don't I go into that? So in the original PlayStation version, it was a sort of 2D game. You basically had 2D models. The backgrounds and stuff were sort of three-dimensional. Again, it was... The Dragon Quest VI had been on the Super Nintendo, and they skipped over with the Dragon Quest VII into the PlayStation, which was a much more powerful system. And they really did go all out with that thing. It was a 2-disc game, for those of you who remember that. Yeah, that means there was basically so much information for the game, it couldn't be contained in a single game disc. Which, again, is something that's not really around anymore. So, with the cameras, basically you could completely rotate the camera in the PlayStation version. You could completely spin the camera around to get lots of different perspectives. You could actually zoom out, too. You could, in some areas. You could basically zoom out to see a much larger section of the area. Unfortunately, they didn't keep that function in, which is kind of unfortunate, as it actually would have helped a lot in some areas. And the other primary problem I had with the cameras was that in the original PlayStation version, there were actually several puzzles that relied on the camera. There was one section in one of the dungeons where you could not control the camera. The camera was literally constantly spinning, and you had to get through a maze. I don't understand why they removed that. Yeah, there were a couple of things like that. There were just some strange design choices for it. I just don't understand what's up with them. Yeah. Speaking of stuff with dungeons that they changed, one of the really, honestly, biggest complaints I have with the remake, they completely removed the first dungeon. Yeah, the first dungeon is completely gone. It really sucked. The first dungeon was great! So, the game works that basically you don't get into fighting monsters and stuff until somewhere between an hour and 2 hours into gameplay in the original version. Part of that had to do with the first dungeon. The first dungeon had no battles. It was all puzzles. Just one puzzle after another, and they were fun. They were clever puzzles, and I am very disappointed they removed them. But apparently, that was one of the biggest complaints with the PlayStation version. I don't understand it. Basically, some of the reviews for it were basically the most boring first 2 hours of a video game they'd ever played. I mean, what the heck, people? It's puzzles. Get good. See, and they weren't even super complicated puzzles. They were not difficult. I just don't understand some people. Yeah, they replaced it with, honestly, much more annoying thing. I've just finished through the main game, and there is an aspect of it that I won't spoil, but they replaced the first dungeon with a 5-minute-long fetch quest, which involves puzzles. You can't see my air quotes that I just did, but yeah, it was the same thing 4 times. It was ridiculously boring. I don't understand. Yeah, they changed some other stuff with some of the dungeons too. They removed a bunch of puzzles. A bunch of them were really good. Some of them were difficult, some of them were easy, but they just removed them. I don't understand it. Yeah, but again, also with the dungeons look good. Yeah, some of them, in the original versions, they looked, let's call it odd. It looked like sort of, they didn't always seem to match each other. I'm not sure how to describe what I'm thinking of. I will say that I was disappointed with what they did to the final dungeon. They removed a bunch of stuff. They added one thing that would have really made sense in the original version that wasn't there. But if you play through the game, you'll find out what I'm talking about. Yeah, again, not sure why that wasn't in the original version. That would have helped so much. Anyway, yeah, again, the final dungeon had stuff that was removed, and I do not know why. What else? What else can I talk about? Yeah, there were some odd choices with designs and stuff. Most of the character models and stuff, they looked really good. Again, there was most of the models for the monsters looked pretty much identical. I did notice a couple of odd things, like they were the same monsters as in the PlayStation version, but their colors were different. That was just a little bit of oddness. I don't know why they bothered changing them. Yeah. It's just like, huh, that's odd. Okay. But hey, that didn't exactly create a problem. But something they did change with this was that, in Dragon Quest IX, they removed random encounters. If you've ever played any old JRPGs, random encounters were a staple. You basically had no control over when you would fight enemies. And when they introduced Dragon Quest IX, they removed that. Instead, monsters would just sort of appear, and they would, if they noticed you, they would chase you down to fight you, or possibly run away if you were really strong. And you had more control over when you fought. And it was okay in Dragon Quest IX. I think it was... I was worried when I heard about that with Dragon Quest VII. But honestly, it turned out really well, I think. Again, the random encounters really made the Dragon Quest series much more difficult. I actually found this remake very easy compared to the PlayStation version. Yeah, leveling in this was, it was so much easier. Yeah, if you ever play it, good luck getting a copy. You can still find a copy. They're $150. In the PlayStation version and in this version, in the first era, you basically get a sidekick that helps you out with random encounters, but only for a very short time. Again, I won't spoil it. If you know about it, you can take advantage of it to level your characters up much more quickly than you would otherwise. Just getting your characters from level 1 to level 5 helps a lot in the first area. So I have done that in the original PlayStation version. Takes a couple of hours. In the remake, less than an hour. Yeah, that was very nice. Level grinding in the remake was so much easier. Oh, it was so good. Yeah. Again, random encounters have been one of the really big complaints people have had about JRPGs, simply because they are a staple, and in recent years they have sort of been changing it, and I was worried that would just ruin the game. I think this made it better, to be perfectly honest. Speaking of grinding, let's get on to one of the really big focuses of this. The character class system. Oh, I love the Dragon Warrior 7 character class system. Because it is what gives the game replayability. Again, problems with JRPGs is the amount of time you have to put into them, and the fact that once you play through them once, you've probably seen most of it. And again, replayability is a big thing with video games. Dragon Warrior 7 had a very interesting character class system. It was first introduced in Dragon Warrior 6. I say Dragon Warrior, excuse me. Sorry, I had to cough there. Dragon Quest VI, because Dragon Warrior 6 was never actually released in America. There was no Dragon Warrior 6. It introduced a very interesting character class system that was, rather than being based around your leveling and stuff, it was based around how many random encounters you had while you were using that character class, which was pretty cool. Yeah, it was only the second time in the Dragon Quest game they had the character class system, and they brought it back for Dragon Quest VII, and then they just added lots of stuff to it, and it was... It's massive. There are 54 character classes. 54. So I've had the PlayStation 1 game for more than a decade. I've done like a dozen playthroughs, and in all that time, I have never gotten all of the classes in a single playthrough. Even to spread out for all the characters you have in the game, never. It is a huge system with lots of customization for your characters. You could play this game pretty much however you wanted if you knew how to use the system. You could make the game as difficult as you wanted or as easy as you wanted. You could theoretically never even use the character class system and still be able to beat the game. You'd probably be increasing the length of your game to 150 plus hours simply because once the character class system gets introduced, the difficulty goes up by like a factor of 5. Yeah. They expect you to use it, and for very good reason. Yeah, thankfully, it's not like they removed it or anything for this game. If they had removed it, I flat out would have put the game down and never touched it again. Yeah, no, the character class system is still there. They made some changes that I don't quite understand why. I guess they made the programming easier or something. There are some changes that I did like, some that I didn't. Some that I do understand why they changed it. Again, like I said, in the original version, you could customize your characters however you wanted. You could make the game super easy. With the remake, not so much. Yeah, that was a disappointing aspect, I will say. I was more than a little bit angry to realize just what the changes were. Because... yeah, those changes... Alright, I'll spoil it. In the original version, the way the character system is worked, you got your basic classes. There are like 12 of them or something. If you master a couple of the classes, a couple of specific classes, you get a more powerful class available to you. And if you master a couple of those more powerful classes, you get some super powerful classes. And they all have more powerful abilities, they give you access to more stuff, and mastering those classes give you stat bonuses. Permanent stat bonuses. Those permanent stat bonuses seem to be gone. They don't seem to be there anymore. It sucks. But again, leveling is much easier, so it's not as big an issue. But the really good thing about those more powerful classes were the more powerful spells and skills and stuff you got from them. In the remake, when you are in those more powerful classes, and you have gotten those more powerful skills, as soon as you change to a different class, those skills disappear. You can only use those skills when you are in the class you got them from. really makes the game more frustrating. Much more frustrating. Yeah, and there were absolutely some balance issues in the original version. Seriously, the priest class, oh my gosh. Play the game, you'll find out what I'm talking about with the priest class. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that thing is just completely unbalanced. But yeah, I will say that the way they changed it, it definitely makes the game more difficult, but it also makes the game more frustrating. Yeah, the only good thing I will say about that change is that that stuff only applies to the normal character classes. There were like 30, I think it is, special character classes called monster classes. You can look that up, because, again, explaining all this stuff is going to take a while. That thing where you lose your abilities in the more powerful classes does not apply to the monster classes. Even if you play the most powerful monster class there is, you keep all its abilities when you change. That was quite nice, as getting the monster classes was much easier in the remake. Again, something I definitely liked. Oh, my god, getting them in the original version was such a pain. Yeah, again, that's why I've never gotten all the classes in a single playthrough before, simply because they were so difficult to get. So yeah, I think I'm gonna stop griping on about the character class system. Again, I understand some of the changes, I just don't like those changes. Oh, and they also remove the mixed class training, which kind of sucks, but They altered the one thing I always used it for, so I'm cool with it. Yeah. So, anyway, another thing. Again, unusual design choices. So, there's one dungeon towards the end of the game that, again, relied on the PlayStation's basically more powerful system. It was a three-dimensional dungeon. Think of it like this. It's a cube. You're changing from one side of the cube to another side of the cube. You're walking across different surfaces, and the cameras were changing and stuff. And thankfully, they did keep that dungeon in. But unlike the rest of the game, where you had the monsters appearing in the overworld, or in the dungeons and stuff, where you could select and choose what battles you had, you could run away from them, run towards them, they didn't have that in this dungeon. They instead had random encounters, like in the old version. Again, it's just... Was it really that difficult to program that? Was it really that difficult? I mean, seriously, it did it for so many other places. Why not there? So, yeah, enough about that. What else would I like to talk about? Well, the one thing I've mentioned before, the stupid accents. The accents are stupid. The names they gave to the places were stupid. Yeah. I understand why some people might like them. I don't like them. They're annoying. And I think they detract from the game, to be perfectly honest. But that's my opinion. So, moving on. The one other thing in regards to names and stuff. So, they kept the names of most of the important characters the same. They were the same in the original Japanese version, they were the same in Dragon Warrior, and for the most part they were the same in this version. Except for one character. That character's original name was an onomatopoeia, which is basically a sound as a word, like spelling out the word bark. Yeah. So, that character, instead of keeping the name, like they would have with all the other characters, they did an English onomatopoeia for his name. That is stupid. There is no excuse for that. Seriously. Yeah, it's annoying. Thankfully, there is something in the game where you can change the names of your characters. Yeah, I changed that as soon as I had access to it. Yeah, I was not keeping that. No. Yeah, so, other stuff. Well, okay, here's the one thing. So, in the original PlayStation version, there was a special area in the game called the Immigrant Town. Basically, you could create your own town, sort of. It would recruit various characters that could spawn randomly in various places. No, I say randomly. They used an algorithm. And you could basically grow the town, and you would get special stuff from there if you recruited certain types of people. You could trade with your friends, was one of the functions. Again, PlayStation used memory cards. If you had a memory card on a game on one memory card, and you put in another memory card with a different game, and you could sort of swap characters from the other towns. And it was cool. I'll also say that it is the only place I ever encountered any glitches in the original PlayStation version. Yeah, I encountered some unusual glitches. I would sort of sometimes just randomly get the final version of one of the final versions of the town at odd times for no apparent reason at a place in the game where I should not be able to. Yeah, I did some fun stuff with those glitches when they happened. Yeah, anyway. So, the way 3DS works, it does not use memory cards, so I do understand how they basically had to change it. I don't understand quite why they changed it in the way they did. I'm not going to spoil it much. You can find out about this pretty easily. It's called The Haven. I'm okay with it. I mean, like I said, I understand why they changed it. Again, just an odd design choice. So there is one other thing from the original version that they changed slightly. And again, it's an odd design choice. Again, I do sort of understand it. So again, I had the original version of the game for more than a decade at this point, and even with games with more than 120-hour playthroughs, I have never 100%ed the game. And that is because of this one thing called the Monster Park. So, what it is, basically, once you get access to a certain part of the game, you can sort of recruit monsters to show up in the park. Basically, you would complete the game, get 100%ing the game by getting every single normal monster. That does not include boss monsters, special encounters, yeah, but it does include both of the bonus dungeons. Yes, there are 2 bonus dungeons. So it gets long and tedious is the best way to describe that. So they changed it for the 3DS version. Basically, you have access to the Monster Park sooner. Get it in like the 3rd area you go to. And again, I'm trying to not to give too many spoilers. But yeah, the original version in the PlayStation, the Monster Park had some plot significance in a later part of the game. So, while I definitely appreciate getting access to the Monster Park much, much sooner, it does sort of completely ruin the plot. Well, I say completely ruin it. It does make things less sensible, let's call it. Yeah, there was something important with one of the characters. Yeah, again, it is a strange change that I don't understand. It doesn't. Yeah, you lose some of the plot points if you access it sooner. I don't get it. It's a weird design choice. I like it, but it doesn't make much sense for the overall game. It's odd. Um. Okay, so, at this point, I think I've talked about everything I wanted to talk about. I think it's a good remake. Yeah, I was genuinely worried at first, but I'd say it's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty much kept true to the original versions, aside from the annoying accents. Yeah, it still has some of its dignity. Again, most of that dignity is lost because of the accents. But yeah, I'd rate this as a good remake. Yeah, I like it. I would definitely recommend it. If you never played the PlayStation version, if you can spare $150 for it, go for it. Again, it was cool. It was cool. This version is still cool. I like it. So, yeah, that is my sort of, call it a review, I suppose, for Dragon Quest VII for the 3DS. A good game, I'd say.